Hi, this is the post Anglesey video where we get to look at what we've destroyed in Anglesey. It's a shame actually we didn't get any footage from the race because we had at least two really good, even three really good races there where we was racing with Dave Murphy and Juicy Brucey. It's a shame the footage didn't work because they were two proper mega races. This car is amazing on the brakes. We had the wrong gear ratios in, and also we had a bad clutch which dropped us to the back at the start of all three races. So it was just like trying to recover the best we could throughout those races. But as I say, this car is just amazing on the brakes. We managed to pull like what was quite a suitable gap and then overtake two cars every time on the in the braking zone. Didn't work out like, but it was just brilliant on the brakes. We really struggled though. We did have the wrong ratios in, which meant I couldn't keep with them down the back. In fact, I couldn't keep with them in several places. But apart from that though, it was really good. Anyway, that was our new engine. That was running our new engine. This is a piece of the old engine. Have another look. The reason we had to lose the engine is because we had a dud block. We obviously had a dud crankshaft. There were cracks on the block as well. The whole lot of it ended up in the bin. In fact, the only good bit was the camshaft, which asked the engine builder Neil Bolt to keep because he'd done put so much effort into pulling it apart. But you can see on this one actually, all that pink sort of powdery stuff is there's some on there as well. That powdery stuff. That's the crack testing stuff. You spray on like an ink and the powdery stuff then draws out the inks if any's got into the cracks, so you can see where the cracks are. But if you look at the crank, this is the old one. There's an area there that is like, it just shows it's fatigued. There's been a crack and then it's fatigued. And this area, this completely different textured area is where we've actually thrown it on the floor and smashed it. It didn't actually break in the engine, it smashed when we threw it on the floor just to see what would happen. I had a video of that as well, but we lost that too. I've not had luck with cameras lately. But that area there, you can see, that's where the crack would have started at the edge because it was quite sharp. And then it's propagated down there. And that's like put a void in. So every time, every cycle, it would have got bigger and bigger and bigger. If you looked at that under a magnifying glass or a microscope, you could see like the crack propagating. And also, yeah, we had a crack at that surface too. Really didn't have very long left, so it was a good job this came out. But anyway, I've got my cup of tea, and what we've got today, okay, today just buttons. So we'll look at the damage we've done. Right, this piece of crankshaft was off the old engine. As I say, that was scrap. It didn't blow up or anything, it just was losing, it just wouldn't pull in the race. It had no power whatsoever. So when we pulled it apart, that wasn't the reason for it actually, it was a fuel supply problem, the reason we had it wouldn't rev. But we pulled it apart and it had a cracked crankshaft. The block was cracked. The whole thing was pretty much useless. But we got this new engine. We had it in for the Anglesey weekend, and on the last lap of the last race, unfortunately, this happened. That's a pretty substantial blow up. That it actually happened on the back straight on the last lap of the last race. From my perspective as the driver, I was just driving along. I'd just gone into fourth gear, probably had about 6,000 revs on it, something like that. Foot down, obviously, and then before we got to the kink at Anglesey, it just jumped out of gear. Didn't lock the rear wheels or anything. And instantly, there was a bit of a knocking noise, bit of smoke, and obviously it sounded expensive. I kind of knew what it was straight away. We'd only had this engine in for 3 days. We had it in. I just finished putting it in on the Thursday night, and we went testing on Friday. So it was pretty disappointing for that to happen. But what we're going to do today is we're going to take the engine back out of the car. We may as well dismantle that engine, see exactly what it's done. Just see what's left of it. I think we probably get the cylinder head out of it. But this engine had only just been put back in. And we was hoping to race it a week later in Newton Park. With this car, to get with every Formula Ford really, to get the engine and gearbox out, the gearbox like bolts onto the chassis. As you can, that's the chassis, that's the gearbox, or that's the bell housing for the front of the gearbox. So you pretty much have to split the whole car in half. The first things we want to do here, so I don't forget later, is these wheels will be quite tight, and when the car's going to come apart in engine gearbox off as a completely separate assembly from the rest of the car. So we want to loosen all the wheel bolts now, because it'll be very difficult when the car's like stuck in the air or it's not connected to anything. Obviously the other thing as well, because the car's going to be split pretty much in half, take the battery, disconnect the battery, So first thing we want to do is take the exhaust off. That's just held on with one of these like springy brackets. Got a box over there that we put all the bits in. Also, to get the rest of the exhaust off, just these little clamps. You kind of find them on like, they're like brake pad pins. They're really easy to get off. It just means the exhaust can come apart really quick. Easy this next bit. You just take out the catch tank. Just held in by one cable tie that. Pull the pipes out. Out she comes. Said it was easy. There we go. Whew, got a lot of stuff in it that. We need to get this filter off, the whole filter housing off, because that one passed the bulkhead I found out last time. Obviously next stage we just drain this oil reservoir that all Formula Fords have. There's a screw in the bottom. There goes my nice new oil. That only did a few laps. Boo boo boo. There's actually still plenty of oil left in that tank, even though when it blew up a big part of it came out. In fact, it was dripping it all the way home off the back of the trailer. The whole bottom of this pan was covered in oil. There's probably plenty of it left on the racetrack. Oops, sorry Fun Cup people who came after us. So we got the oil out, we got the fluids out, or at least the water, exhaust off and everything. Next thing we need to do now is to take out the remaining fuel that was in the tank. Because there will have been a little bit left. To do that we use this old fuel pump just connected to a power supply. That is, by the way, a piece of camshaft which I fished out the hole just before. Let's turn it on, see what's in there. Could well still be a lot because I'm so light, me as the driver, I have to brim the tank in a race just so I make the weight limit at the end. It's part of my ballast. I also have a load of lead underneath my seat. Tell you what, that fuel does not look very nice. It looks a lot darker on camera than it is in real life, but still it's a pretty orangey. So there's something else on the Christmas present list. There's a new fuel tank. Santa's got to be very generous this year. New engine, new fuel tank. You just need a new car. That is orange. That looks like you've had a heavy night out. Well, I don't need to finish that, do I? Pretty orange that though. Looks like you need a good drink. Yeah, it's well orange that. Don't know is the answer. Don't know why it's like that. But anyway, there's about a gallon. It's not that easy to dispose of. Old fuel. So the best thing we can do with it is put it in the crappy old Fiesta. No one really gives a shit about this car, so the old fuel goes in it. I tell you what, that's cheered me up. I hate buying petrol. Right, everything's disconnected now. Unfortunately, I don't have an engine crane with me today. My one's broken, the pump broke. I sent it back. Never received a reply off the company as bought it off. I think it was called SGS. Don't buy one. Anyway, what we're going to do then, to get it out, we're going to, well, I've shoved these two bits of wood underneath the chassis, which is currently supporting the car, and also the wheels are just touching the floor with pretty much the same weight as you'd expect if it was just a gearbox. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to disconnect the front mount, in fact all the mountings, and then I'm going to roll it out all as one complete assembly on the rear wheels, just holding it at the front to support it. That means the car is splitting pretty much in half, so we've got the engine and gearbox, and then the rest of the chassis. It does work. I did it a couple of weeks ago, so let's get on with it. Right, we're virtually ready. There's now no bolts holding it in there. There's no bolts on the bottom. There is actually a gap formed already. These are the wishbones have been disconnected. Same on the other side. However, my stupidness obviously holds no bounds. I've forgotten to take the bolt out of the front engine mounting, which means the whole weight of the engine's resting on it now, which means it's not going to come out very easily. You can already see it sort of canted over to one angle because with the load of the engine on it. I think the easiest thing now is hammer time and just buy new bolts. It's not going to do the threads of it any good, but it's just going to have to go out the hard way because I'm not putting it back together just to get that bolt out. So yeah, where's me hammer? Right, I've hammered it out. That bolt will be knackered now, the threads will be ruined. But if I sort of move the engine around, the whole, yeah, you can see that, can't you? The whole engine's now sort of just resting on that part of the rear bulkhead, which is keeping the front engine mounted in there. So I'll show you what I'm doing. Just the whole lot of it moves now. You can see the gap opening there. So I'll just lift it up by the front there and roll it backwards, and it should be out. Easier said than done, like. Well, it'll come out now, but it's physically hard. Also, I'll be able to see what I've forgotten to disconnect, such as the gear linkage, which I couldn't undo where it was. Oh dear, that was the throttle linkage. I forgot about the throttle linkage. Right, it's off now, try it. There we go, piece of piss. Right, that was what was holding it in. Ugh. I've actually, hang on, sorry about the shaky camera work. That was what was holding it in. I think that'll be neat, that'll be alright. The carburetor's is fine as well. It's a bit wobbly, but it's always been a bit wobbly. But there we go, there's the engine. Ooh, what a mess that is. I mean, there was like loads of oil from when the engine blew. And there's the gearbox and suspension and engine, totally separate. So the next job now is going to be to take the engine off the gearbox, stick the gearbox back in the car, and then this car's going away. For winter. It's going to go housed in a different garage until it's rebuilt over the winter. So that's it for this year for this car. Bye bye car. I needed a new brew. I had to stop for 5 minutes. So anyway, I started stripping everything off the engine. Inlet manifold, just pretty much everything. Dry sump pump, there's not left on it. I'm going to take the head off before I take it off the gearbox, just so that the engine's a lot lighter, but I found this quite funny. The valve clearances are a bit out. That's because the camshaft and all the tappets and everything got blown out the side of the engine. That one is surprisingly okay. That is that's an exhaust one as well. So that, you know, it really feels quite about right. Obviously that one's gone. Might be a bit of a rattle, that one. After that though, you look okay. This head doesn't look too bad. I think some of the, oh excuse me, go around the other side. They're pretty big, those inlet ports. I don't know if there's a maximum size. Actually, it's probably about right. It probably is about legal. I looked at the inlet manifold when they took that off. It's all in that box now, but that actually looked like someone had messed with it. So that might not have been legal anyway. But anyway, I'll take the head off now just to make the engine lighter. The head and everything should be fine. So I'll whip it off quickly. Right, so I took the rockers off, undid the bolts, got the head loosened now. I'm just going to whip the head off and see what it looks like inside, see if there's any damage in there. I don't think there will be. I think the head will be perfectly good. Just use my mallet to free it. Oh, yeah, little mallet. Like that. There we go. There we go. There's the head. Let's see what it looks like. That's actually quite a good looking head. Yeah, it's in pretty good nick, that. I mean, to be honest, it must have been, I don't know, definitely serviceable, definitely okay. I mean, it felt okay in the race. It felt fine, performance wise. Let's put that down. There's one rod back, tappets, part of the tappets, bit bent, that one. Doesn't go with the rest of the rubbish on the floor. Let's have a look at these pistons. There we go. Right, the light isn't very good for the camera, but it doesn't really matter. All this is going in the bin anyway. But just out of curiosity, they don't look too bad. They're not too sooted up. In fact, they look surprising. Oh, there's a bit of damage on this one actually. Yeah, actually, what? Do you know what? It looks like that piston's turned round when the engine's blowing. Yeah, it definitely has, yeah. And it looks like it's probably struck the top of the head, so there might be some corresponding damage on the head. So let's have a look. Yeah, it will be these two valves that it would have hit. Now, there are a few marks in there. I'd say, I mean, the best thing to do obviously would be to give it to an engine builder and just, you know, leak test it and see if it does leak. I imagine these two valves here will be slightly bent. At least that one anyway. That one looks like it's being hit, but you know, there's no significant damage compared to that piston. It's obviously the piston's obviously out of whack, and that's the only thing that can really hit it, one of these valves. So I'm just going to assume for the moment that it will be one of those valves. So this head may still be serviceable, but I don't know. We'll see. Now the head's off though, we are now ready to take it away from the gearbox. Then we can take the sump off and have a look inside and see what damage it's done in there. It looks pretty destroyed from the outside, but it'll be interesting to see. I imagine I showed you the crankshaft earlier on. I imagine it snapped right there, right at the end where they all go. And so there'll be just one piston completely on its own. It's probably wrecked the one next to it, and well, we'll find out. Ta-da! First thing I want to see though is what the input shaft on this looks like. Just push it a bit further back. Just hopefully there's been no damage to it. Oh god, you can't see because of the lights, I'm afraid, but it turns around okay actually. Doesn't look bent at all, so actually I think I've got away with any damage to the gearbox. You just push that away. Push the whole lot of that away. There you go. And turn our attention to the engine. Now first thing I noticed, never seen an engine do that before. It turns pretty freely now, because obviously that's where the crankshaft broke. I'll tip it upside down, we'll take the sump off, and then we'll have a look. In the race in Anglesey, or in the 3 races in Anglesey, we made 3 terrible starts, and it was basically just because the clutch slipped really badly off the line. I couldn't do a burnout. As soon as I tried to do a burnout, the clutch slipped, and all I could smell was stinking. Well, I could smell that stinking. It was burning away, making a very foul smell. There's like plenty of material left on it. Oh, by the way, I've just taken this off the end of the flywheel, just because I decided it'd be much easier to tip the engine upside down if it weighed less. So there's kind of nothing really wrong with the clutch as such. It's actually, the problem was probably in the pressure plate. Before I took it off, a few of these forks were sort of bent inwards, as if they was already slightly pressed in. Like, what happens is when you press the clutch, the release bearing pushes up against these forks and pushes them inwards, and that pulls the pressure plate inwards away from the clutch, so it no longer presses the clutch between the flywheel and the rotating pressure plate. Now some of those forks are already bent in, and if we have a look inside, let's see if we can find them. Yeah, it's these ones. Yeah, I'll try and do this on camera. It's always really difficult to get things in shot that you can see quite clearly with your eyes, but there's actually a big load of grass wedged in between the top of the pressure plate and these little forks. I think what that was doing when it was still screwed onto the car is that it was holding a couple of these forks in, so on one side of the pressure plate there wasn't as much pressure, and that makes sense as to when I took it off. Some of the bolts like released the pressure on this thing with just a few turns, whereas all the others took quite a few turns before the pressure was gone. So I think that was what was responsible for the bad starts. So you could take all that grass out. I will do that if I want to use this pressure plate again. It's actually quite a good spare, because the clutch seems okay. So that's probably what I'll do, but not a job for today. So it's very unusual for a flywheel to do that, and basically that's because it's snapped off the end of the crankshaft. That does give us a slight problem in that it's there's sort of nothing to stop the bolts or the flywheel turning when we're trying to undo the bolts. So the easiest way to do it is actually through impact. It doesn't have enough time to accelerate the engine away, rotate the flywheel. But there's enough torque there to turn the bolts. Loose enough now. By the way, if you do this, don't use your best ratchets. And there it is. That's the bugger. That's the bottom of me con rod. Not only has it destroyed me bloody block, it's destroyed me bloody sump. Anyway, let's get this sump off and have a look inside. Actually, that piston and cotton rod has just saved me a job, because there was 2 bolts there and I don't have to undo. They'll be on the floor in Anglesey somewhere. Okay, it's finally time to crack it open and see what we've done to the inside of it. I'm not really sure whether these little nuts have to come off. We'll find out. Let's face it, there's not much you can break in there now, is there? Looking like they do. Might have to move the camera out the way for a minute. Right, you got it moving then, so I think we can just whip it off. Through. Yeah, that's it. Oh dear. Well, it shouldn't look like that. That's obviously a bearing shell. Oh, it started raining. Anyway, can't really tell what kind of condition they was in before it blew up, but doesn't look too bad. That is a cam follower, which that normally touches the camshaft, and there is the broken crankshaft. That's a main bearing, which has obviously been blown off, smashed off. I wondered how I could see a thread, an undamaged thread sticking out, but obviously it was one of the bolts that go through the main bearing caps. Out of the way. That is why the flywheel turns so freely, and actually it's probably why the rear wheels didn't lock up, because there's just enough space to rotate that round without it touching the bottom of the big end. And there we go, that's me piston. Now actually, that is at an angle. This is knocked that at an angle. When the engine's carried on turning around, because it's connected to the gearbox, it's pushed that to the side, as you can see, and that's what's rotating me piston, and that's what's ended up hitting the top of my valve and the cylinder head. So that was a bit unlucky really, that it's gone at such an awkward angle. There's bits of engine, bits of metal all around the engine. Yeah, all kinds down here. Just to torture myself though, I'm going to take the crankshaft out and see what it looked like, see what kind of condition this engine was in before it blew up, because it's obviously not in very good condition now. Oh, there's the other bolt for the mains. Still really tight. So let's have a look with the old one. Remember, this was off the old engine and we found a crack starting there and there. We just compared that to where the new one's failed. I'll just take off this main bearing cap. Oh, actually the bearings look quite badly worn if you look at that. I mean, that's down, you can even see the copper inside it. That's pretty worn out, that bearing. In fact, just a minute. Yeah, perhaps it's spun round. I don't know, maybe they don't have. Yeah, that looks like it was that way. Anyway, that looks pretty, that's pretty knackered anyway, that shell. So this engine wasn't that good after all. We take this off. Hang on. More bolts to undo. I just took that seal off there. So we take out the old, take out this one. If you compare the two, this is the original engine that came with the car, and then this is the one that's blown up last week at Anglesey. You know, it's happened in exactly the same spot. This is where these engines are vulnerable. Apparently the flywheel can hit the floor and initiate the crack, and the fact that it's basically, the Kent engine's probably the worst part of the Formula Ford, in the whole Formula Ford car, and that's what happens. As you can see, exactly the same failure on both cranks. It's just that we found this one in the engine builder's workshop, and this one actually happened on the track. But the result is a completely destroyed engine. To be fair, like, this engine was not in good condition even before the crank snapped. This engine was sold to me as having done about 600 miles, and that main bearing shell is in really bad condition. I don't think that's happened when the engine blew up. that has happened. That has been like that for some time. Obviously it's all damaged after the engine blew, but I don't think this was the best engine in the world anyway. So just to check, actually I took off another main. That's got proper wear in it. Like, it's not that bad actually. It's not as bad as the other one. Perhaps they weren't really like that. Perhaps that was partially caused when the engine blew up. But this one's, you know, there's still showing quite a bit of wear on that. Also I took a big end cap off as well, to have a look at them. They look a lot better actually than the main bearings. That's not too bad, that one. Not an amazing engine this though. Good riddance. Glad it blew up. £3 down the toilet. Well, I've got quite a collection of like broken engine bits now that I keep on a shelf. So I'm going to keep this piece of the crankshaft as well as the other end bit. I'm also going to pop this piston out. So I've got that too, the bent piston with the bent cum rod. I just have to lift that bit of the engine up, try and support it somehow with my foot, and then out you come. I do like my little mallet. Come on, get out. There we go. Actually, you can see the damage on the piston when the piston's like rotated, so it didn't. So as the flywheel was still turning, and that piece of the balancing weight knocked this to the side and rotated it. This is the damage it suffered against the top of the head, or against one of the valves. It's taking a bit of a whack there, so chances are like at least one of the valves is going to be bent. I think it's that exhaust one. Just because of the damage you can see on the exhaust valve, so even that head's not going to be in great condition. So oh, piece missing from the side there, so there's more stuff from my shelf. Anyway, this lot's going to go in the toilet, or this lot's going to go in the bin anyway, so I'll get out the way and put the gearbox back in the car, and we'll put it away for winter storage. Bye bye M89.